John Walter.
Good evening and welcome to Drugs, Crime, and Politics. Thanks for joining us this evening as we discuss the ludicrous war on drugs. Tonight with us we have our regulars and a special guest. I'm your host, Bindu Nair, and our host, Clay Jones. And tonight we also have Dean Becker, star of the radio, the voice over the airwaves that you hear on a daily basis now?
Pretty much. Across the country it is, yes.
Yeah. 420 Drug War News is daily.
Sure.
Yeah, definitely. And you can hear him on KPFT, Dean Becker. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you, Bindu, for the invitation.
Yeah, definitely. And just want to say congratulations out there, America, and to Texas. Thank you. We finally voted out in record force numbers. Over 75% of people voted early this election. And Harris County was blue. Their blood ran blue here. A couple of notable elections. Unfortunately, Nick Lampson was out. John Culberson stayed versus Mike Skelly, who ran a well-funded campaign. Culberson's been here for several years, and he's had numerous calls, letters, visits to his office about the Hinchy-Rohrabacher, about medical marijuana, about the war on drugs. And we just need to keep on pushing him and continue to let our voices be heard and to let him understand that this is an issue that's important to us.
You know, it's come to the point that it's no longer a local issue. There's 26% of our states, 13 out of 50, that the public has overwhelmingly voted in marijuana propositions. I think that it's come to the point now that it's out of the local, and it's time for our national leaders to start paving the way for more sensible drug reform.
And start stepping up, definitely. We have Barney Frank out there who tirelessly is, bringing up these legislation in order to vote on. We need to bring this to these people's attention. The 13th medical marijuana state was just voted in. It was Michigan. It was 63 to 37 passed that severely ill patients can grow their own. I think they're still going to be working out the rules of that in order to have a medical marijuana state. Massachusetts, another
yes.
excellent win, decriminalized small amounts.
That was a 63%?
I don't
believe so. I believe that was a 63% vote in. That people have overwhelmingly voted that 1 ounce and below is no longer a criminal offense. It's an infraction. You can get a $100 fine, and it doesn't go on your permanent criminal record, so that down the road you want to get a job in the health care or an industry that you don't need a drug conviction on.
Well, furthermore, they did the numbers. It's saving the city or the state at least $30 million a year.
Yes.
Because you're not tying up police officers, you're not tying up nonviolent criminals in jail.
Or the judges, or the legal system, or the jails.
Right.
And let's face it, right here in Texas, it's said that we have an average of 300 people in prison for simple marijuana. But they're not really there for that. They're there because they're revoked because they tested dirty on a UA.
Just 300 in the state of Texas? That seems, is that just for Harris County?
No, that's at all times. It's a prison, not state jail.
Right.
Well, you're talking about the support, 63% voting for these initiatives in those two states. I think it needs to be noted in this time when so many people voted overwhelmingly for Barack Obama, both of these initiatives outpolled Barack Obama.
Yes.
So it is a common sense approach.
It's across the aisle. It's not a Republican or a Democratic issue anymore. It's an American population.
But the politicians run scared of changing these laws for fear of not looking tough, of not being, an all-out warrior.
Let's throw them all in jail.
Well, they'd enact some law in order to get them out. It's in all these states that have ballot initiatives, essentially. But when you poll Texas, a predominantly Republican state, it's 78%, 80%, 75% in all counties, regions of Texas. Harris County, the southeast region, was something like 74, 78%.
Yes.
So
I think with this new batch of politicians coming into office, it's time, and I think most citizens are beginning to realize it's time to become full citizens, to contact these representatives and tell them what you think. Because these politicians, when you talk to them behind closed doors, they'll admit there's a need for change. They can't be the one to present the bill. They can't be the one to expose themselves. But if they hear from enough of their constituents, they can do that. And we need to give them that ammunition.
You sound like you talked to John Culberson.
I know.
No, I haven't
He has
talked
the
to them.
most diverse of tactics, and we just need to get about 10 or 20 people into his office at the same time. You know, I've spoken to Nick Lamson, I've spoken to John Culberson, you've spoken to Dwayne Bohack several times.
Oh, yes.
And at least, the latter two, other than Culberson, have been somewhat receptive to the issue. Nick Lamson was a little bit confused. He said his brother was a physician in Texas who could prescribe medical marijuana. And I was like, I think you're a little bit confused on the issue, but I didn't want to push it. John Culberson will just basically, and I think we've described this before, he wants the people to start a bill that will be voted on federally that would, enact states' rights and that have it so that states' rights supersede federal rights.
Well,
So it's like basically federal
Chase
U.S.
our
representatives exactly would have to vote on a bill that would take away their own power.
look, these, at state and federal level, I don't care. They all are cowards in this regard. This drug war has gone on for 100 years. It's never accomplished any of its stated goals. The terrorists are thriving. The bloody cartels south of the border are thriving. The gangs are thriving. Children have easy access. Death, disease, crime, and addiction. And they can't say a word because of this ingrained fear. They consider it heresy to speak up.
And the thing is, cocaine prices are going down.
Yeah.
Which means the supply is getting bigger and bigger and bigger. I don't understand how it feels it's accomplishing a damn thing.
As I understand it, we're going to see a little clip with John Walters, who spoke at the James Baker Institute.
Tell us about that.
And he mentions within there, I'm not going to outline the whole thing, I want folks to see it, but he talks about the fact that through their efforts, the price of cocaine is starting to rise. And he made that announcement, I think, 3-4 months ago, that they had finally succeeded in their plan, Colombia, that they'd lowered the amount of cocaine being grown. And it wasn't a week later that the Chronicle did a major study, determined the price had actually fallen, and about a week after that, the UN drug czar, Antonio Maria Costa, stepped forward and said, nope, it's actually gone up 27%. These people will lie to you on a daily basis. You must stop this madness.
Definitely. And actually, on that note, why don't we watch the interview of drug czar Walters and see what he has to say. Do we have that up and running?
Now, hearing some remarks from John Walters, who, you know him, of course. He is the director of the White House Office of National Drug Control Policy. He has been known as the nation's drug czar for the past 7-8 years now. Director Walters coordinates all aspects of federal drug control programs and spending. Under Director Walters' leadership, youth drug use has dropped to its lowest level since the early 1990s, according to various statistics. Director Walters has overseen the creation and implementation as well of several key anti-drug media campaigns and has restructured all of it to improve its effectiveness. And having worked in the media for so long, I am quite well aware of the drug czar's efforts to get the media to be involved in the push for anti-drug messages out there, and as well the implementation of random drug testing at various schools. In fact, 1,000 schools throughout the nation now do that. So, ladies and gentlemen, for a much more broader perspective of where all of these drugs are coming from, let's look at the national and international view from Mr. Walters. John Walters.
Thank you, Art. Thank you all. I'm responsible for the coordination of the federal effort, but the reason I'm here is because Houston is a model of where this all takes place, which is, of course, person to person at the local level. Almost everything the federal government does is designed to help enable and support people like yourselves and the people you work with and the people in this community. In fact, Houston has been a model of, and I think this conference is an example of the leadership that Houston has given in bringing the community together to focus the different parts of institutional structures that really can make a difference. I think we're undergoing what I would call a quiet revolution for the better in dealing with our substance abuse problems in this country, and it's rooted in the science and recognition that appropriate movements by institutions and making their success broader, we can change this problem durably and effectively over the long term in dramatic fashion. I want to congratulate Dr. Martin and the Becker Institute, Dr. Bush for his remarks, and chairman of the Houston Harris County Drug Office. And I know Ray Andrews and Dr. Messiah are part of the organizers here. I saw them earlier. I want to congratulate them on the work they've done as well here. While I share Dr. Bush's hostility toward more committees, I also know things don't happen on their own. So somebody does the work, and I want to recognize the people that did. I saw, frankly, Judge Ed Emmett, who I understand is going to speak to this group later this morning when I was doing some local media. So you have many people from many places who we've worked with even in our office who are laying hands together on this problem and building consensus for the future. I think that's critical. I'm going to try to leave time for any questions you have that if I can be helpful to your work. You know Houston better. I can tell you something about what we've seen nationally. I would say, just as a couple introductory points, two things about the revolution I talked about. I think that revolution is based on the science. Some of that was alluded to just a few moments ago. That allows us to see substance abuse for the first time as a disease in a thoroughgoing way. I recognize this is not necessarily what everybody understands and believes everywhere, but I think more and more what we're seeing is the key way in which the understanding of the brain we have now sees this as a change, and we understand that change, and we understand how to employ more parts of our community effort against that fundamental common understanding. What I mean by that is we're using even that science to help with the prevention that we're doing with young people. More of our advertising is to help young people understand what we've seen with the changes these substances have in the parts of the brain alluded to by Dr. Bush. We're telling you, unlike I'm part of the baby boomer generation. I see from the looks of some of you that you're part of my generation too, for better or worse. We did a terrible thing. We made substance abuse associated with growing up in America. We made substance abuse associated with becoming kind of independent from being children to being adults. It's a kind of being someone who tests the limits rather than just obeys the rules. And that huge change has echoed through our society. One way it's echoed through our society is our generation has the largest rates of alcoholism and substance abuse now in our 50s and 60s of any generation before or after. We now know why. We didn't know when we were younger. That these substances not only can affect the brain and change it to make you dependent, but use even short of dependence changes the risk factors for you for the rest of your life. Some risk factors we now know you inherit. Some risk factors you change by your behavior. And so we, by our larger exposure to these substances, have paid a price for the rest of our lives and will until we die as a generation. By the same token, the 24% decline we've seen in teenage drug use is something the current generation will take with them for the good for the rest of their lives. So for people who say, well, we don't really make any difference over time, sometimes it goes up, sometimes it goes down, but it's always going to be about the same, that's clearly not true. The science is showing us if we reduce the exposure and we intervene effectively, we change the demographics and the casualties for a durable period of time. Also, we know how to better engage. As I said, we can use the science that tells us this is a disease to help young people see what they're doing. You're not just choosing to use drugs the way you'd make other uses of your freedom in life. That's what my generation thought. We get to use our free time as independent individuals, and it doesn't harm anybody but ourselves. We get to do it. This isn't like choosing the kind of music you listen to or the clothes you wear. it makes you sick. It makes your friends sick. And most people now, unfortunately, or fortunately, if we want to turn it to a good, have that experience in their family. They have a relative or friend of the family who've become alcoholic or drug dependent. They know they become a different person, that taking over the brain. You know, I remember my brother when he was this way and now he's not. We can help them understand and use that suffering, let's be candid, to understand what's really happening and what you really need to do, because this is a disease we can treat. That's the other thing. This is not something where it's a failure and you fall off a cliff and we can't. And we have millions of people in recovery, and we have more of them talking about the recovery. But when they talk about it, I think it's very important that we help people who are not engaged to understand that part of that recovery for almost everybody I meet is people around them somewhere said, you need to face this, but you can lean on me. There's some help in treatment, in support. What's AA about? It's about maintaining your recovery through helping other people with their recovery. It's a very important part of what you see in the recovery community, and also I think it's a great example of what we want most of our children and our citizens to be, people who care about the people around them in important matters. So this great tragedy becomes an example of people who are in some ways the living embodiment of what many of us talk about and don't do as well in our lives. I think the other thing this helps us do, in addition to helping people understand, is give some clarity where people have been wanting to be involved in denial and still suffer shame or avoidance. In my job, some of you have the same experience, no doubt. Because of my job, I have people come up to me, sometimes family friends, who have an adolescent who they know, because many times parents do know, are starting to experiment with drugs, underage drinking. They come to me and tell me this, and what they want me to tell them, I know, and you must know this too, is it's going to be okay. That most kids do this, and it's kind of a phase, or they'll pass out of it, and or they want me to tell them the magic secret where they don't have to be, too worried, or they don't have to be too placed into a difficult position. And what I have to tell them is probably what you have to tell them is, I'm going to have to tell you something you don't want to hear. We know that these substances, if you continue to use them, will make anyone dependent and will cause the disease that you are fearful your child is going to face. And that's just a matter of chemistry. That's a matter of scientific law. We can make anybody an addict or an alcoholic. We can do it to monkeys and rats and mice. We do for research purposes. So you can't look the other way and say it's going to be okay. It's not going to be okay. Now maybe they'll stop on their own, but the chances are great that if you don't act, there is a risk that they will continue to do this. And you need to explain to them, and what is this, what do they have to understand? They have to understand that this disease, unlike other diseases, involves denial. That's part of the problem. So when you come and tell somebody they have a problem with alcohol or drugs, they don't say, well, thank you, I didn't realize that. I'll go right away and I'll seek professional help and I'll comply with the professional recommendations and we'll get over this disease. They have to prepare themselves for something that they know, and I think we need to touch on that because that's a wellspring of information and power that we don't touch on enough. They're going to resist this. They're going to yell at you. They're going to hate you. They're going to blackmail you. I'll run away from home if you don't let me do this. They want to know that, well, I just found my child for the first time with just marijuana. And that's okay, right? And you have to tell them it's never the first time. It's never, never, never the first time. It doesn't happen. Probabilities are infinitesimal. And they will lie. This will be the best lying they'll ever do in their lives. And they're going to lie to you, and you say, well, I don't want to distrust my child. They can't help themselves. That's what the circumstance and the substance is doing to them. So we need to use the tools that bring a community together. What we've tried to do, and what this city has been a leader on, is using more institutions to help parents and community leaders. You've been a leader in screening in the healthcare system. Ben Taub Hospital was one of the first to do regular screening in the intake of patients across the board. Do you drink? Do you use drugs? To help them get brief interventions if they weren't dependent, or to refer them to more intense care if they needed it. We've taken this program nationwide. We now have codes in the public pay, Medicaid, Medicare system for reimbursement that states can adopt. We're getting more health insurance companies to reimburse for screening and brief interventions. We want to take it so every time you see a healthcare professional, just as they take your pulse, just as we screen for things like hypertension and diabetes, a preventable disease, we can help prevent this from moving from initiation to acute disease. In addition, we can get people with acute disease into proper treatment, and we're reinforcing the message, this is a disease. It's not about lifestyle. It's about your own health, and we understand that. We need to make that more salient. We're using screening in the workplace. We've had drug testing in the workplace for many, many years. A great example of revolution, of course, is the military. Had a huge problem 20 years ago and used testing. But also, of course, many companies are now using this as a way of retaining important professionals and preventing disease from being a progressive problem for their health and safety and longevity with the corporation and, of course, with their families. In addition, as was mentioned, we have, at the President's direction, for the first time since the State of the Union speech in 2004, provided money for random testing in schools. Once we had a Supreme Court decision that said random testing may not be used to punish, must be done confidentially, must be done with the parent to get the parent and the student help. We now have a means of using a huge public health tool that we've used for other diseases. I don't know whether Texas is a state that requires screening for tuberculosis for children to come to school. Many states do. Why? Because a child who has the disease and is not treated will get sicker, and they will infect other children. That is exactly what happens with this disease, although it's not spread by a virus, despite the metaphor. It's spread by behavior from child to child. What does the testing do? It finds the particular student that is at risk and gives the society and the schools an obligation to intervene with them and their parents to get them clean and sober and to make them successful. What happens now in most other places? They continue to use, frequently not helped, and until they either drop out of school or drop out of school and enter the criminal justice system, or whatever happens through some random set of events. What does random testing allow us to do? It allows us to use the institutions of the schools as well as the healthcare system to help us head off this disease and contain it. If you understand it's a disease, you begin to see the epidemiological components of this disease and how it's spread. We have also been fostering the advance. I'm going to see the Harris County Drug Court later today of the use of screening and intervention in the criminal justice system. To take people who are not violent offenders that are an immediate threat, but to get them into treatment. Many times we wait until they offend over and over and over and over again, until they either go to jail or prisons or until they become such a destructive factor for their lives that they are extremely difficult for society to continue with. We don't have to do that. Today, the single largest source of intake is the criminal justice system, over 2,000 drug courts nationwide, and the court becomes an instrument of intervening and supervising. Some of you no doubt work in the drug court system and see the powerful tool this is to break the cycle of self-destruction. Good for the individual, for the family, for the community. It saves money in the long term. It saves lives in the long term. We're beginning to see that it's not about giving people a free pass. I've seen, if you want to visit a drug court if you're not convinced, it's not fun. I've seen people actually stay in the drug court system longer than their sentence would have been, because drug courts that don't accept failure. If you fail, you get a proportional response of an adverse penalty, partial incarceration, loss of some of your freedom, and you're going to come back and succeed. I've seen people enter drug court and say, "Judge, I'm not going to make it." You've seen people in addiction. They've given up on themselves. Their parents have given up on them. How can the love of a father or mother die? Well, it does with alcoholism and substance abuse, because you give up on yourself. I've seen judges and court professionals say, "I know you don't believe in this. We're going to make you succeed." And the most common thing you hear, although when everybody says it, it's the first time for them, is when they graduate from drug court, "The day I was arrested was the luckiest day of my life. Saved my life. I'd be dead." We're seeing this used in more directions for family court, because we know substance abuse is a huge part of the problem of child abuse and endangerment. We're seeing combinations of, you have some of the here, a mental health court working on co-occurring disorders with substance abuse and mental health to get the ability to care for people into the lives in an effective way of those who are, in some cases, most affected by the disease and most in need of the institutions that help them. We have also fostered drug-free communities. I see Sue Thaw here from CADCA. We've been expanding drug-free communities, an effort to help the organization of individual communities bring together the resources, federal, state, and local, on sound grounds. We just finished our first evaluation of drug-free communities where they exist, working primarily on underage use, alcohol, tobacco, drugs. We've had, and as they mature, we've had significant declines in comparable demographic areas of rates of use. Another tool that helps the community use these other institutional changes for the good. Because I want to leave time for questions, I'll just mention two other things for your consideration. One, we've had significant declines not only in use but even in adult use as measured by workplace drug testing. Today, since the earliest consolidated workplace drug testing rates go back to 1988. Today we're lower than any time during that period. Cocaine has dropped dramatically in the last couple of years. Methamphetamine has dropped dramatically. Marijuana has gone down. So not only for young people but for adults. Some of that is also the contributions being made by supply reduction. I didn't want us to forget that. The efforts by Colombia, by Mexico to, for the first time, more aggressively attack these. We've seen reports as high as, in some areas of the country today, a 50% decline in the availability of cocaine between 2006, mid-2006 and the present. Methamphetamine, the efforts to go after both the organizations producing in Mexico and the domestic production by cutting off the precursor chemical pseudoephedrine and ephedra have been dramatic in most areas of the country, and a welcome change from this horrible, horrible substance. We still have more to do, but we are following through against these efforts. And when you see the effect of supply and demand together, youth rates of cocaine and methamphetamine use, where that's a small part but a troubling part for some, have dropped up to 60% over the last 5 years. So you begin to see what happens when we work on the reducing the business side of the supply and the demand side consumption through these other efforts. Again, we need to follow through. We take our eye off the ball. We forget about this. When problems get better and they're not as big a threat, we forget about what we're doing and the urgency of your work and the urgency to follow through. But there is a revolution going on. And finally, I would mention that there is as you know, one area that, despite all these trends, has been a counter area, which has been prescription drug abuse, has gone up, led by synthetic opioids, painkillers, Oxycontin, Vicodin. And we need to use the tools appropriate to that particular problem, where I think screening is an important part of that in the healthcare system. Also educating healthcare professionals about some of the dangers and follow-up. We are working with states to put in prescription monitoring programs that will help them see the small number of criminal distributors here. And I think we need to also recognize that for young people it's a different problem than for adults who may be dependent. For young people, in many cases, we've used our media campaign to alert parents. They're going into medicine cabinets and taking pills out and using them. They're not buying it. There's no barrier to entry. It's in your home and it's for free. They've been told on the internet that yes, street drugs are dangerous, but pills are known quantities. They're made by a regulated industry. They're safe highs. Obviously, Vicodin, Oxycontin and others are extremely powerful, extremely dangerous, and because young people have a tendency to use these in combination with alcohol, which, as you no doubt know, can be deadly with these particular substances, it's an urgent need. We're working to try to help parents get control of these substances in their home, talk to your kids about pills. Somebody is talking to your kids on the internet, or somebody's talking to their friends on the internet and will talk to your kids. Don't let them be fooled. Again, my job and your job covers a lot of topics. I have not tried to exhaust them. I hope I've been somewhat helpful in telling you what we see and why I'm quite optimistic that we can maintain the momentum. Obviously, that happens community by community, and one of the encouraging things is all of you being here and being committed to creating the consensus on the basis of what's best known, what works best, and driving it forward with your support and effort. It's been a great honor for me at the end of my service in this administration to work with communities such as this, and I want to thank you for being in the forefront of the achievements and the knowledge that we now have. With that, I'll be happy to take any questions people have about things that I can be helpful with, and if you don't have.
Welcome back to Drugs, Crime, and Politics, and you were listening to Drug Czar John Walters. We're sorry for that horrendous showing of mistruths, exaggerated statements. I
And
myself feel like
lies.
taking a shower right now after seeing that. But sometimes to know yourself better, you have to know your enemies just as well. So we're going to go ahead and dissect some of the things that he said. Map Inc., I believe, had a great article on his speaking tour and some of the things that he said that were obvious misstatements.
Map Inc., mapinc.org.
Exactly. So, and also feel free to call in with any of your commentary. We are a live show, and we do appreciate our listeners and our viewing audience calling in. Where to even start? So, can you give us a conclusion of what that was? Was that about?
That was
testing?
presented to a group of about 300, I would estimate, DEA agents, members of SAMHSA, which is a kind of a government
Health
group,
organization,
yeah,
substance abuse,
a propaganda wing,
Okay.
I would think, is maybe a better way. You know, ONDCP and other folks that gathered, I guess, to rally behind this bag of lies, because it pays their mortgage payment. We'll get into more details, but it was nothing but a love fest for prevarication. That's really what it was.
Right. Now, other than yourself, were there any, anti-war on drugs people, like they call them the drug warriors? I don't know what to call us, but...
Smart.
And
No, not that I was aware. I mean, there was one other, Judge James P. Gray.
Okay.
He very incredible situation. The panel lasted 2 days at James A. Becker. The drug czar spoke on the first day of the panel. They invited Judge Gray to speak the evening before the panel began. He had the auditorium. He had about 100 people show up. They had, I think, 5 or 6 seats on the front row with big reserved signs on them that were allocated for the drug czar, for the heads of the ONDCP, the DEA, etc., to come attend. Those seats were never filled. No one from the other side came to see Judge Gray.
They don't want to hear that.
Only because they don't want to hear the truth.
Well,
They have spread their lies. I mean, I haven't heard anybody lie so much in 20 minutes in all my life.
well, let's get into the details. You took some notes. Let's talk
I
about
took
some of the
notes
points.
here. First of all, at the beginning he said, Houston is the model of where it all begins. And
I've been saying that on the airwaves on KPFT for over 7 years now, that Houston has, in fact, Channel 11 did a major report on this. Houston leads the world in its incarceration rate. We arrest more people for minuscule amounts of marijuana, microscopic amounts of hard drugs. Empty bag? Oh no, there's 2 grains in the corner, you're going to prison. Houston has served as the model, the example for the rest of the United States, and we have to step back and look at this. Why is this happening in our hometown? Why are we the world's leading jailer? And the drugs are outlined. We've been an experiment.
Right. An unfortunate experiment. And now it sounds like Ben Taub is the next experiment. I don't know if other hospitals... Well, I thought it's scary. A drug test during every patient intake screening, and he was like enumerating, I said, well, for every year you have to get your physical, you have to get your blood drawn. Okay. But he's talking about if you have to go in for hypertension or any other thing.
A sprained ankle to the emergency room, whatever. They want to test every person every day if they could. I came up with the thought that perhaps they could put a urine tester in every toilet so that when you flush it, if it tests positive, the door locks and calls the police to come get you. That, and something that needs to be addressed. One of the prior drug czars, Mr. Robert DuPont, now is a major stockholder in many of these urine testing companies that, again, they want to test every flush, I suppose.
Now, does he, sorry to interrupt, but does he have any, does DuPont, that name sounds familiar, and that
From
was...
New York.
Well,
yeah, now he's not related to the original
DuPont.
DuPonts who
nylon.
wanted the drug war.
Yeah,
Yes.
okay. That would have been an interesting relationship. That's too conspiratorial. But it was he's a major stockholder
Yes.
in drug testing kits. And
So if you go to the emergency room and you say, yeah, I smoked marijuana, what are they going to do to you?
Well, I once tested positive for marijuana on an employment test, right?
Yeah.
And I didn't get the job, but I had 3 different doctors call me in following days to invite me to come in for treatment, to be put under control, so to speak. And I want to continue that thought. I worked for more than 20 years for every major oil company in America as an auditor, project analyst, accountant. I smoked marijuana just about every one of the days I went to work. I succeeded beyond my wildest dreams. Marijuana did not impair my ability to stack numbers.
Mm-hmm.
I've smoked marijuana every day for the last 20 years, and it hasn't impaired me yet. But I was interested in something that John Walter did say. Now, let me get my thoughts straight. He said that... no, go ahead. Let me get my thoughts straight.
All right.
Well, back to this hospital thing, to me, just past the obvious aberration of the whole point of a healthcare system, to me it's just another example of passing the buck kind of thing. Like, first of all, we have zero tolerance in schools. And so at that point, it's up to the teachers in order to basically regulate on the kids of, you know, are you doing drugs? Do they have it on them? What do we do with it? Zero tolerance, teaching them. And now we're passing the buck on to hospitals, healthcare workers, in order for them to basically charge you with possession if you possess this in your bloodstream.
The sad fact is this has actually been an ongoing procedure in many hospitals, particularly like ones I've heard about in Arkansas, where a pregnant woman may come in, give birth to a child, and if it's stillborn, then they charge the woman with murder. And you know, the use of the cocaine or whatever drug may not have been the cause, you know, but it's usually poverty that leads to those type situations.
Now, John Walter said that this was a disease.
Yes, he did.
Let's get to that in a second.
Now,
it looks like we've got a caller right now. Hi, you're on the air. Hello?
Yes, ma'am. How you doing? My name is Ernest Wilson.
Hello, Ernest.
Good evening. Did you have a question or a comment for us?
Yes, sir. And
Go ahead.
it's like, really, they ain't trying to help the community. I mean, they all about just locking up people because it's all about money. Without,
I think you just
like,
boiled
really,
down right to the point.
I mean, weed
Are you there?
don't do nothing. You know, I don't smoke weed.
I think his phone is
And
cutting
I don't
out.
pad drug tests.
So you're fine. But you understand that this is a problem.
Yes, sir. Your phone's kind of fading in and out. If you could, get right in the mouthpiece and please give us your question.
Okay, I'm sorry about that, sir. And I'm looking at y'all on TV, and what I'm saying is, like, if they're really trying to help the community, they wouldn't be locking up people over. Like, I got caught with less than 1 gram. I've never been in trouble. I went to college. I graduate. I can't even get a job because I got caught with less of a gram of possession of cocaine, and that's on my record.
Yeah.
And that's the only thing that's on my record. Every job I'm trying to get, they deny me.
Yes, sir. Yeah, look, you are underlining a very valid point, sir, that they consider drug users to be unconditionally exterminable. They can kick in your door, take your children, your home, your cash, your car, your worldly goods, send you to prison, then once you're out, deny you credit, housing, or even a job, and then tell you to succeed. And they seem surprised when so many people wind up back in prison. It's an outrage, sir.
Well,
Yeah, I think.
yeah,
I've done a lot of stuff in the community. I even met Andrea Gonzalez. I met him before, and, you know, I done stuff in the community by doing cutting yards, helping elders people, and it's like the only thing on my record is a possession case, less than 1 gram, and I done 6 months. But I had to do 2 for 1 in the county jail. Instead of doing 6 months, they made me do 3 months. And it's still on my record to this day. I haven't been in trouble since 1998. And to this day, I still can't get a job.
Yes, sir. I want to ask you to do something. This is what I do on a daily basis. I appeal to the public via my radio shows and everywhere I go. I speak to organizations around the county. I preach in the churches. And what you have to do, sir, is to contact your elected officials. Tell them your story. And then talk to your grandma and your mama and your brothers and everyone you know and get them to speak up. Tell them that it is the drug war is not the problem. It is the prohibition which makes the black market the world's largest multi-level marketing organization. It is up to us to take the reins, to take control and reassess this and redirect our efforts to compassion. Everyone who does drugs does not have a criminal justice problem. They don't even necessarily have a medical problem. In fact, for most users, it is not a problem. And we have to look at it that way. It is the drug war that creates the crime, the addiction, the death, and the disease. We've got to speak up, and that's what the best I can recommend to you, sir.
You got that, caller? Thank you so much for calling in.
I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, I was saying a minute ago, John Walter said that this is a disease. Now we're putting people in jail with a disease?
He didn't address that section of it, or that aspect of it in his speech, as you noticed. He tries to come across as compassionate, but if he were compassionate, he would address that. He would make that part of his speech.
He would address it, and he wouldn't manipulate and mince words so much. If you notice, twice in the beginning of his whole just evil lies, whatever, his whole statements here, first of all, he said that he wanted to make changes rooted in science, and then that this was a revolution based on science. And we actually know what goes on in the brain now and everything. And
we can do it to monkeys. We can do it to anybody.
Well, actually, his quote was, and this was in the fear factor section that I made a note about, he was saying, you know, you have to get people out of this cycle. Is the moment you touch it, you can become addicted, because we can make anybody an addict or an alcoholic. We can make monkeys. We can make rats. And that is the absolute quintessential example of some type of fear factor that, you know, you are absolutely powerless over yourself. As soon as you see it, as soon as you touch it, as soon as you taste it, you are addicted.
And it's never the first time. Some children are apparently born smoking marijuana.
I guess so.
Yeah.
Lucky guys.
You know, I have to make a comment about that last caller. This is the type of story that kills me. And
it happens 100 times a day in Houston.
Yeah.
100 people are busted every day in Houston.
He's not a criminal. He's, you know, he's worked for his community. He's actually sounds like he's been active in politics and everything. He's met some of the Houston City Council leaders and everything, and he can't find a damn job to save his life. He's like, I went to college, you know. Obviously, he's trying to make something of himself, and he's like, this is still on my record. And this is the same thing that Students for Sensible Drug Policy was based off of. This is what so many organizations are based off of.
The November Coalition.
The November Coalition. It should not be one strike, you're out.
And you stop and think about it. Most people don't understand. A gram, you know, we're not a metric society. But you see those sugar packets, and you know, when you go to the restaurant, they got them little packets. That's a gram. And this gentleman had less than a gram. That doesn't make him a drug kingpin. It doesn't make him a threat to society. It makes him a small-time user who doesn't deserve that record and that hanging over his head for the rest of his life.
Now, the man said that he got caught with cocaine. He said he didn't say he got caught with crack. And the penalties for crack and cocaine are so much different. I wonder if anything had to do with his color, because the man did sound black.
Well, we know that blacks are arrested
at a much
higher rate, you know, but it winds up being about 36 times more going to prison, blacks going to prison than whites. In some states, in Texas, it's only about 3 to 1. In Illinois, it's 99 to 1. You know, it is a bigoted racial implementation. Yes.
Yes.
And, you know, I work with many organizations in the county, but I'm appealing to any black listeners out there. If you've got some leverage in the churches or within the community, I can bring you a black Texas warden who believes the same as I do. We've got to end this madness. We've got to find a better way. We've got to stop locking up generations of our children for, you know, plant products in their pocket. It's ridiculous.
Right. Exactly. And then this leads to another comment that John Walters made, that whenever they lock someone up, and we kind of had a laugh about this in the studio, but this is an absolutely absurd statement. He said that people will say once they've been arrested or locked up or gone through the drug courts, that they'll look back and think, this is the luckiest day of my life.
Yeah.
You know, it's just,
there's so many folks laughing as they're getting brought into the jail. Yeah.
I'd love to be arrested.
Please bring me to jail.
Well, again, they do that to justify it. But who do they get when they, you know, want to do a TV spot and the drug czar's there at a treatment center? Because that's the only place he can speak without people like me challenging him.
Right.
But
Or a closed meeting.
But they'll bring some youngster, 15, and, well, I'm so happy now because, you know, and they may be better off, but they are robotic. Because in order to get out of that treatment center, they've got to fess their sins. They've got to inform on their other friends. They've got to pony up, you know, to become part of it.
And for one case like that, there's 10 to 100 of cases of the guy who just called in.
Yeah.
You know, whose their lives were ruined.
There's
you know, this guy was lucky enough not to have a family that he was supporting.
Or how do you know?
Well, you know, he might as well. You know, a family that he's supporting. You know, people that depend on him and everything. It's just...
You know, this has become so ingrained into our gross national product. They feel that if we cut down on the policemen that are needed to enforce these drug laws, we don't need the judges in the criminal system, this all cuts back on our gross national product. Oh. I mean, and they don't see the fact that if a policeman is harassing somebody over a joint, looking under his seats and tearing his car apart, that he could actually be out there doing some good law enforcement.
Finding that lost child or stopping that rapist or...
Doing something important.
Doing something important.
Being a servant to the public.
Look, I've talked to many cops, and again, behind closed doors, I can't find anybody who thinks the drug war can hold a drop of water.
Right.
But behind closed doors, you can talk to cops, and they'll tell you, look, I've never had a problem. You know, I don't have the problem arresting marijuana users that I do the drunks because they just have a different mindset. You know, Walters makes marijuana sound like it will incapacitate you, have you stumbling down the hallway, slurring your words. It does not affect the mind in that fashion. It might slow you down, might make you think a little deeper, eat a few more Cheetos, but it's not going to make you smash your car.
And on that note, we've got a caller. Hi, welcome to Drugs, Crime, and Politics.
Good evening. This is Dr. Che out there, and I have a remark about the issue.
Yes, sir.
I believe that it is no secret anymore that U.S. capitalist government, the profiting government, has been involved in producing, distributing, and selling the drugs on the streets to little kids out there in order to profit for the system. This has been known, it is going on, and it will go on forever until this kind of really rotten system, profiting system, is done with, and with the help of the people, the grassroots, the revolution, forced way, the bloody way. There's no other way. And also we are aware that they have done some other experiments, like the first atomic bomb experiments on innocent people, soldiers, Bikini Islands, and also the syphilis experiments on the blacks, which the Clinton administration apologized for it too few, too late. Just want to let your listener know that the government is the problem, and they are the ones that are bringing these drugs. I have lived in Florida for a few years. I know that when you watch the local news, TV local news, they're always saying that, hey, this airplane came down, evaded the radars, things like that. And who they belong to? They belong to those same senators over there that are sitting down there. And as Dean Becker said correctly, they are passing the prohibition laws, but they are the ones, they are the problems. We have to get rid of them by any means possible. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for the call.
I wanted to address that, the experimentation on the American populace. I mean, Albert Hoffman invented LSD, what was it, in 43, 48? And in the 50s and the 60s, the CIA had agents going around the country conducting experiments on just random individuals with LSD, various doses.
Military personnel also.
Yeah, they wanted to see if it was a mind control drug, something they could use to, I guess, overthrow the Russians. But, and then the manipulation of the government. I had, Tuesday, I had Cele Castillo, former DEA agent who worked in South America. He was one of the whistleblowers on the Iran-Contra affair. He saw the manipulation of the data, so to speak. He saw instances where the Guatemalan soldiers were actually playing soccer with members of one of the cartels down there. It's almost a joke if it weren't so horrendous. And then he also pointed out that as he came back to the States and tried to tell his story, that they tried to quash him and subvert his thoughts. And just earlier this year, he got arrested for trading guns at a gun show because he's still trying to sell his book, Powder Burns. He's still trying to expose this story that the CIA was complicit. He said he even got a call one time from some agents in Honduras that sent him to an airplane hangar in Guatemala where the CIA was shipping cocaine north to America.
That's pretty interesting. We've got another phone. Hi, welcome to Drugs, Crime, and Politics.
Yeah, I just had a comment.
Please.
For the guy in the white shirt, man, I think you should run for president, man.
Then they'd take me off the air. I can't do it.
Thank you. Any other comment? Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks for the call.
Thank you.
Well, you're a reverend, is that right?
I am a reverend. I speak in churches around the Houston area. I'd love to come talk to your church, speak to your organization. That's what I do. I figure eventually enough of us will wake up, and I'm trying to get one person a day to speak up. We own the moral high ground, every square inch of it. And the day we all can step forward and just demand we return to real American justice. You know, before 1914, all drugs were legal. Bayer heroin sold on the grocer's shelf right next to Bayer aspirin at the very same price. Then, as now, aspirin kills more of us than all hard drugs combined. We've been fed a bag of lies. We've been led to believe this propaganda. And we must just cast it off. We must go for the truth.
Absolutely. And that's an excellent point. Speaking of the truth, which John Walters was not, he was talking about the understanding of the brain, and that's how we're going to use that in order for prevention and everything. But what was the prevention that he was talking about? He was talking about advertising. And advertising that's targeted at the youth. Before we get into that, let's
we got a caller?
Yeah, we've got another caller. Thanks for calling. You're on Drugs, Crime, and Politics.
Yeah, my comment is I think that most people, citizens, and I guess politicians, I think most of them know that it's a myth that marijuana is a gateway drug that leads to other harder drugs. I think they all know that, but I guess it's just the politics and the red tape that they play with to keep the people manipulated. So if that was a fact, would they admit that alcohol, which is legal, cigarettes, which is legal, is a gateway drug to lead to maybe other drugs?
Exactly.
Well, most people start off smoking cigarettes or alcohol before they go on to anything else.
But because those are fashionable social drugs that we deem okay, you know, those are okay, even though those are specifically drugs and things that you can get
They
addicted
kill more people than marijuana ever thought of killing.
Right.
Right.
Thank you so much for the
Thank
call,
you, sir.
and that's an excellent point. The whole gateway drug, that was disproved. There's actually studies. I need to bring in the Common Sense for Drug Policy book that was just released for the 2008 version, but it's gateway drug theory has been disproven. I think it's just the Massachusetts police were trying, the people who were against the decriminalization bill, they were citing because marijuana is a gateway drug. And I think it's nice sounding. It sounds like it's right, but you know, if you think about it, you apply any common knowledge to it. Yeah, alcohol and tobacco.
It's like fables that have been handed down, that have been carried within society as if somehow they had a basis, but they just don't. I wanted to address the gentleman's thought that these drug laws have been handed down like they're the Ark of the Covenant. They're blessed by God somehow. Yet, if we were able to open it, there's no bottom in the thing. There's nothing in this policy. No basis in logic or reasoning at all.
Right. Let's see if the next caller has anything to add to that. Welcome to Drugs, Crime, and Politics.
I was just wondering what steps would need to be taken to legalize marijuana in Harris County or Texas?
Absolutely fantastic question. Thanks for asking.
First of all, we'd have to change our governor, because our governor has said that he would never allow medical marijuana in our state.
Right.
Then we would have to probably get a ballot initiative reenacted in the state. because our politicians just don't seem to care what we as citizens think about this situation, because I guess they think that we can't make up our mind properly.
We're treated as children. It was in 1914, passage of the Harrison Narcotics Act, they took away our right to decide as adults what we're going to put into our own body. They handed it over to the medical establishment and government to make that decision for us. And if we step out of bounds, then we are considered deviant, we're considered criminals, and as the gentleman with less than a gram indicated, you know, prosecuted and persecuted to the fullest extent of the law.
And now he's going to have a lifetime that he's going to have to fight that lousy gram charge.
Unless and until, this is my whole reason for existence, until the last gentleman who called, what can you do? You can speak up, you can educate yourself, you can motivate your friends and family, you can convince these politicians that it's okay, because they know it's okay, they just haven't heard it from you. That's the answer.
The more people that go into their office, because, you know, emails, letters, calling, but if you actually go to their office or make that concerted personal effort, you know, for every one person who goes into the office, for every one person who makes a phone call, writes a letter, they know that there's 100 people behind them. So the more people you can get speaking to these.
And if you do write a letter, put it in longhand. Don't use the computer.
Yeah. When was the last time anyone
take the snail mail, mail it, and I have had so many tell me that that one letter means more than 100 of the email that they get.
Right.
Okay. Looks like we've got another caller. Hi, welcome to Drugs, Crime, and Politics.
How are you doing today, ma'am?
Good. How are you? Did you have a...
All right. I'm just saying, like, I had just called earlier about the dude that got caught with less than a gram.
Right.
And I live in South Park. You know, South Park is mostly completely, like, 85% black. And I noticed, like, what the government do, too, is, like, a lot of my friends that's police officers that graduated high school with me, put them back in the neighborhood, the controllers, but yeah, when they pull you over, they either take your money, they take your drugs, they tap your your car.
Yeah.
But they ain't no better than us. How could we say we trust the policemen when they quicker than us? I mean, like,
Yeah, that's
2
an
weeks ago they
unfortunate
raided his
situation.
house, like during Ike, when Ike came, they raided the house, they took like $10,000 from this dude, and they took his drugs, but they didn't take him in jail.
Well, look,
You know,
what you're...
We have so many illegal policemen.
Thank you for your call.
Thank you, sir.
There's policemen every day that are going to jail directly from what he has said. People doing exactly the same
Ripping off the drug.
Right.
Drug users, unconditionally exterminable. But go ahead.
You've got bad policemen everywhere.
Yeah, and you got bad border guards and ICE and, you know, military helping to smuggle drugs across. It's just off the hook. What we have to do is realize we're being lied to and not take it anymore. It's that simple.
I agree. The one thing that I've always tried to do is just go speak to my congressmen, my House of Representatives, and I've come away with the fact that if more people went to them and talked to them the same way that I have, that Bindo has, I mean, you've been there with me, I think that more could get done. I think people are afraid their name is going to go on a list.
Well, there's a new horizon for us with this new election season, and it is time to speak up. It's time to do your part. I think we're wrapping up here. Please check out my website, drugtruth.net. It'll hook you up with my radio shows, my speaking engagements.
Thank you so much, Dean, for being on the show. It was an absolute delight. And yes, once again, it's call your representative, call your senator, call your mother, call whoever. There was a famous social justice reformer that said the first step in social justice reform is to lose and lose and lose and lose, and then you win. But thank you so much for joining us tonight, and we hope to see you in 2 weeks from now.
If they stop Afghanistan from growing opium and they cut down the Colombian cocaine, when Mexico runs out of marijuana, they think we'll quit getting high, but the drugstore on the corner's standing by. Cut me loose, set me free, judge what I do not what I put inside of me. Why do you pick my pocket? Just let me light my rocket. Who died made you the boss of me. Get out of my life, let me be. Pfizer and Merck kill more of us than the cartel's crap ever could.